Right now at T-Mobile, we're getting rid of the trade-in headache. Switch with our Magenta Max plan and get the epic iPhone 12 with 5G on us, no trade-in required.
Check out this great 4K video. I even posted it with 5G way out here.
A new iPhone 12 on us, no trade-in required. T-Mobile, the leader in 5G.
With 24 monthly bill credits plus tax for well-qualified buyers. Contact us before canceling to continue bill credits or credit stop and balance on required finance agreement due. Up to 2 per account. T-Mobile is the largest 5G network and named fastest by OpenSignal Awards and USA 5G User Experience Report July 2021. Details at T-Mobile.com.
¿Por qué esta Coca-Cola de McDonald's sabe tan bien? ¿Será la máquina? ¿Será el popote o el hielo? O quizás soy yo.
No sé, Diego, pero vámonos, ¿no? El ¿por qué esto sabe tan bien deal? Un refresco de cualquier tamaño por $1, solo en el $1, $2, $3 menu de McDonald's. Precios y participación pueden variar, no se puede combinar con cualquier otra oferta o combo mío. Coca-Cola es una marca registrada de The Coca-Cola Company.
Have you ever wondered what the media and big tech is hiding from you? Like massive stories that actually affect you in your life that they don't want you to see because they make the left and the Biden administration look bad. Well, now there's a podcast dedicated to exposing all of that each and every day. So download the fastest growing podcast in the conservative movement, the Ben Ferguson Show podcast right now. That's right. You can listen to Ben Ferguson Show podcast on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Download it right now.
Welcome to today's edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show podcast.
Welcome to Hour 3 of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. This is Buck in NYC, my man Clay out there in Nashville, Tennessee. And we are bringing you all the news from all across the country and around the world right now. Lines are open. We'll try to get some calls perhaps later this hour, 800-282-2882. That's just dependent on when exactly we are joined by number 45, Donald J. Trump, the former president of the United States. He is scheduled to be with us this hour. We are excited about it. Quite a day to get to talk to the most recent commander-in-chief, a commander-in-chief I think whom we could all agree would have had a very different, a very different plan, a very different response, approach, you name it, to what has gone on with this withdrawal in Afghanistan, which is now at least officially over from a military perspective, but far from over from an American perspective, as we still have Americans on the ground, or should I say a civilian perspective. There are U.S. civilians who are still very much in harm's way in Afghanistan. We no longer have a military presence in that country. We'll get into all of that with the president in a little bit, the former president, and we'll have President Biden supposedly. See, I'm glad I said allegedly, supposedly last hour, because we knew it was going to move, Clay, and it's moved once again. Later this hour, Biden will be addressing the nation about the end of the 20-year war in Afghanistan. I'll just tell you, Clay, I want to get into this different realities we live in, but just give me what is your quick pregame pitch as to what Biden is going to say in this speech? Because I got a pretty clear vision in my mind.
I think what he will say, and I think a lot of our listeners will expect it too, is that he had the gumption to officially end the war, that we got what we needed out of Afghanistan when we killed Osama bin Laden 10 years ago.
In Pakistan, right.
Yeah, right. But he will, and he advised against that, by the way, but he'll take credit for it now that he and Barack Obama, he will try to connect himself to that decision to kill Osama bin Laden. I think that he will say that leaving countries in any manner or method is impossible, but they had the most successful airlift. I think that's what he's going to try to argue in modern American history. And I think he will say that they pledge to get any Americans who want to return to our country out if they are still behind enemy lines in Afghanistan.
Agreed.
And I think that's his overall narrative.
I think you could call it, or you will be able to call it afterwards, a solemn victory lap, because he recognizes we just lost 13 of our own in that suicide bombing attack. So this isn't certainly now, of course, it shouldn't be a spike the end zone moment in any respect, considering what a debacle this has been, but they're immediately going to try to shift perception of this from, remember, though, the debate in the beginning was, it doesn't matter how we're doing it, it's about getting out. And so don't focus too much on that. Don't focus on the poor execution, the lack of planning, all the rest of it. Focus on the overarching decision. Well, that was very convenient. Then, when the thing was going to hell, and it's a very convenient way to look at it now. So I'm with you. The solemn victory lap, though, is I think what you're going to see in that Biden speech. He made the right call, a gutsy call, you could say. I think that's what he said about Obama sending in SEAL Team 6 to Pakistan. But Clay and I also often sit here and we go back and forth, not just on air, but off air, about how it does feel like people are living in two different realities in this country right now when it comes to their perception of, right? It's you'll have a conversation with somebody about Joe Biden and they'll think, what do you mean? Things are great. And you'll say, well, how could you ever think that things are great based on the Biden decisions that have been made? And then they'll start talking about, the insurrection and Trump's mean tweets and things that you'll say, that doesn't matter. What do you, it seems like babble.
Yeah, the number of people, Buck, that I will hear say, I don't know why COVID's still a thing. If people just got vaccinated and wore masks, then there would be no issue at all with COVID in this country. And I'm like, have you seen Israel? Have you seen England? Like, COVID's never going away. But a lot of people just believe because they've heard the talking points. Oh, if everybody was vaccinated and if we wore masks, COVID would have ceased to exist. I mean, I saw this place that still gives the forecast, Buck, the University of Washington, the IMHE, forecast place. They still said, hey, we could cut deaths in America in half if everybody just wore a mask. And
out of their minds. Out of their minds.
What data are they even looking at, Buck, to be able to say right now, oh, we could cut all the deaths in America in half if people just wore masks? I mean, they do wear masks. All over the country, people are still wearing masks. They don't work, but a lot of people are still doing it.
Clay, when you see the difference in media belief and approval in the public, it all starts to make sense how you could have folks who are still thinking, if I social distance and wear 3 masks and listen to Fauci, if I worship my little Fauci idol before you go to sleep every night for 5 minutes, it'll keep the virus away from you. A Fauci a day keeps the COVID away. Before we get to all of that, you can look at, I swear, I'm never going to let
Fauci has heard your impersonation of Fauci? You guys went to the same high school.
We did. So we both have been auctioned off at the high school as a lunch with a person of note.
He's a lot more popular than you are at the high school, by the way.
He got a lot of money. I got to tell you, he's a very, because he prevents the droplets from spreading through the air.
If they had to revoke someone's graduation standing, and the choice was Buck Sexton or Dr. Fauci.
Oh, yeah.
And your alums voted. What percentage do you think would support you in continuing to be an alum?
I'm going in to take the GED tomorrow, probably, because they would definitely pull my high school diploma from me. And it's unfortunate. I went to a Catholic school, but for those out there it's a Jesuit school. And the Jesuits can be great educators, but also run on the liberal side of the Catholic spectrum. Do you still
have, by the way, dreams occasionally that you have credits that you haven't gotten yet to be able to graduate from high school or college or law school? Am I the only person who still has those dreams?
I mean, I definitely have nightmares where I show up to a calc exam that I have not prepped for at all, and I was out over the weekend partying. This may or may not have happened several times in high school, and had to sit there and you get that nervous high school kid sweat of, oh my God, I can't do any of these problems. That's a recurring nightmare. But Clay, I'm turning this into a therapy session. We'll have to come back to this another time. Partisan divides in media trust widen, driven by a decline among Republicans. That's the Pew Research data that Clay and I are referring to here. And this shows you how we live in alternate realities. And here's the short version. I'll toss this one to my man Clay once we just get these numbers out here. 8 in 10 Democrats, 78%, but basically 8 in 10, 80%, trust the media either a lot or some at the national news organization level. Okay, so we'll call it 80% just to make it an easy number. Republicans, it's more like 30%. Now, first of all, that tells you so much about our perception of the country. And by the way, I obviously, and I know you agree, I think the Republicans are the far more perceptive group in this case, because whether it's PBS, CNN, New York Times, they're all agenda-driven, left-wing, commie organs. I'm sorry, but it's true. That's where we are. And my question, Clay, is who are the 30% of Republicans? I mean, they need to listen to the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show, because they are not getting the straight scoop from USA Today and CNN.
Some of them may consider Fox News to be, in that category.
Fair point. And they should actually break that out in the data because that would be the only outlier national news organization.
I've said before, if Rupert Murdoch didn't exist, as frustrating as the national media is in this country right now, you've got the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, and Fox in general, Fox News. If Rupert Murdoch didn't exist and those three companies were owned by someone else, think about how much more frustrating it would be. But no, look, I think a lot of people, you're a longtime true believer, right? Like when you were like 14 years old, you were like,
I was reading William F. Buckley articles and being like, he's the man.
So I'm a little bit different, and I imagine we have a lot of both people in our audience. I had a red pill moment. Right? For people out there who are familiar with the phrase, mine was directly connected to the media, and it was because I was in the media. For those of you out there who don't know the red pill, go watch the first episode of The Matrix, Matrix 1, phenomenal movie. And I had, as I was in the media, in the sports media, some of you may remember do you remember this, Buck? Did you even cover it? I'm curious if you did. Do you remember all the protests at Missouri? Probably 7 years ago.
Mizzou, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. University of Missouri. They had a argument. They had all these alleged racist incidents, including a poop swastika. Like, it was a big story back in the day. And then the football team got involved. Football team joined the hunger protest and everything else. That, for me, Buck, was because I knew I was covering college football at the time. And I knew the University of Missouri very well. I knew their football team, their coach, and everything else. And I saw the way the national media covered that story as if Mizzou was an awful racist university filled with subhumans. And I said, this doesn't comport in any way with what's going on. It came out, basically, that entire story was a farce. And when I sort of pulled that thread and looked, or took the red pill and looked behind the way the media covered it in a desperate hope that there was going to be rabid racism and anti-Semitism and that university was a hotbed of hate. And when I actually saw the facts, I said, I have to start looking behind some of these stories now and paying way more attention. You can say I should have.
Did you switch party affiliation as a result of this red pill moment?
In many ways, yeah. I would say I was always a libertarian, kind of middle of the road. I wasn't, a diehard advocate of either party at that point. I was kind of frustrated in general. But that moment with Missouri, and then as things continued, for me, probably the biggest tipping point was then on top of it, the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. They were so thoroughly unfair.
I will tell you that I've had long conversations with many conservative friends, and I even said this in my view of conservatism in America. That's when a lot of us, Brett Kavanaugh actually, was when a lot of us became wartime conservatives. You realize, okay, this is about the total annihilation and destruction of people based upon evil intent in the pursuit of power from the organized, aggressive left.
Yes.
And we either meet that full on or we continue to lose this country. I think the Brett Kavanaugh moment in that way, it had a profound impact on me.
For a lot of people.
There are people that you all know from Fox News who I was texting with behind the scenes because I was also in contact with the White House directly during that Brett Kavanaugh situation. They couldn't believe it. They actually were in true disbelief. And I mean, some of them, one or two of them actually were in tears about how ugly what they were doing to Brett Kavanaugh was. I mean, in private would cry when they talked to me about it. These were ladies.
Anyway. At that point was of the opinion, I can't vote for anyone that could participate in a farce like that. And then obviously COVID has just put it on steroids. I mean, all of the insanity. But that's where it started for me was wait a minute, how much of what I believe is not true that I'm getting from the media on a day-to-day basis? And
you can be Neo, and I'll be Morpheus. I just don't want to be. I don't want to be like one of the Agent Smiths or whatever, because those guys.
Yeah,
are no
the
fun.
Agent Smith. That first movie, man. That first
it's
Matrix
amazing.
is so
That's
good.
the top 10 action movies. Matrix 1, top 10 action movies all time, in my opinion. I think it's tough to push it out of the top 10. But all right, also number 1 underwear all time.
What
Tommy
a transition.
John. Thank you. Creators of the best underwear on the market, and they're proudly carrying American innovation forward with their new line of men's underwear called Apollo. Look, Clay and I both have our Apollo underwear. This is, once you try it on, it fits so well. It keeps you cool and dry, and it's the best underwear you're going to get. I also, though, have Tommy John sweatshirts now. They've got this great line of clothing, all super comfortable. But the underwear is the foundation of it all. Constructed with an exclusive performance-grade, dry-release fabric blend, Apollo is the future of underwear innovation. It makes a huge difference. I'm going to tell you, it is really tough to have a good day, especially if it's hot out there and you're a guy, you're wearing those big baggy boxers, they start kind of riding up. We all know what that's like. Apollo is super soft and comfortable, keeps you drier and up to 7 degrees cooler, Clay. You love them, I love them.
We do indeed. That's why they've sold over 15 million pairs. Not just men either, by the way. Women out there, you guys can get hooked up too. Phenomenal offerings on the Tommy John website. Every pair backed by Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear or its free guarantee. Apollo will become your new favorite underwear. Guys, a lot of people, they stay committed to underwear for far too long. A lot of women out there know what I'm talking about. The man in your life walking around in some old underwear. How about getting hooked up right now at TommyJohn.com/Clay and Buck. Right now, you will get 20% off your first order. All you have to do, TommyJohn.com/Clay and Buck. One more time, TommyJohn.com/Clay and Buck. See site for details.
We all have a story about our lives, our passions, and the best way to tell it is with a podcast. And Spreaker is the easiest way to start a podcast. All the tools you need to record, edit, and publish are right here. Spreaker even helps you monetize your podcast, so you can turn it into a side hustle or a full hustle. Listen, this is your chance to tell your story. So launch your podcast for free now at Spreaker.com/start. That's SPREAKER.com/start. From the iHeart Podcast Network.
Welcome back in. Clay Travis, Buck Sexton. Going to be joined, at least we're scheduled to be joined, by the President of the United States, 45 himself. Maybe soon to be 47. A couple of years, who knows? He is scheduled to join us at the end of this hour. But want to also mention this. College football is coming back. I'm going to be on the road, leaving on Thursday for Knoxville. Hope to meet a bunch of people there. Then I will be in Charlotte for the big game, Georgia-Clemson. Buck Sexton has never been to a big college football game.
Never.
Right now, all of you out there listening to me, if you pull out your phones and you go to FanDuel.com/Clay, that's FanDuel.com/Clay, you can bet $5 and you get back $150. All you have to do is pick the winner of the Georgia-Clemson game. Just pick the winner. Georgia-Clemson, biggest game of opening weekend. FanDuel.com/Clay. Buck, have you ever bet on a college football game?
Nope. And so I'm going to use FanDuel for the first time when we're thinking it's probably going to be Ole Miss and Alabama that I'm going to go see.
Yes.
So for anybody that are fans. And what I'm going to do is find out, just in sheer self-interest in raw numbers, do we have more Ole Miss fans listening or Alabama fans listening? And that's what I'm going to place my bet on. So I got to compile the numbers here. I got to look at the metrics.
I bet it's going to be. You need to put a poll out.
It's probably 50-50.
I'm actually curious.
It's probably 50-50.
There's a lot more Alabama fans than there are Ole Miss fans, but I don't know all of our affiliate stations all over those two states. I'm not sure which one to have more of. Speaking of President Trump, we are going to be joined by him, like I said, a little bit later, scheduled to close out this hour, this show with him. But Senator Mazie Hirono, cut 13, she wants everybody to know Afghanistan is Trump's fault.
There are a lot of Afghans who were applying for the special immigrant visas, and the Trump administration slow walked these visas to the point where it was not even happening. And so the development of a lot of our Afghan partners and their families who are not able to get out is not something that just happened overnight. That this is a situation that was very much on, in my view, the Trump administration. But we're going to move forward and do everything we can to get all of these people out in the coming months.
Yeah, whatever Mazie Hirono says, you can assume that the opposite is true. So she says it's Trump's fault. It's not Trump's fault. We should be joined by 45 here in just a few minutes. Donald J. Trump going to be calling in. But, if you want to create a highlight reel of your life, the most heartwarming memories possible, what would you include in it? Well, I just went through this process. I had this old photo album where the photos were already getting kind of faded out, and some honestly had looked like the edges were starting to fray. But it was me at sports camp, me playing on high school teams, and I want to have that stuff to share with my kids one day, to share with my family. So I sent in my Legacy Box. Legacy Box is your chance to have aging tapes, films, and photos digitally preserved so the essential moments from your family's history can be revisited and shared for generations. And this week, Legacy Box is offering 50% off at legacybox.com/clay, so you can turn a lifetime of memories into a highlight reel. Clay, I did it. So easy, so trustworthy, the whole process. Seamless.
Yeah, you got to do it. Take advantage of this limited time offer. 50% off. Honor the moments that have shaped your family. Trust Legacy Box to preserve your family's history. We do it. You can do it as well. Send in your kit and take advantage of this offer while you can. Legacybox.com/clay for 50% off. Legacybox.com/clay.
Coming back in here with the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show, and we are minutes away from being joined by former President Donald J. Trump, number 45. And we're going to talk to him, obviously, about the big news of the last 24 hours, the end of military presence in Afghanistan, U.S. military presence. And there are Americans left behind. There are questions about how many. And Mike McCall of Congress is saying it's more than what the Biden administration is saying right now.
I just got reads in it's actually higher than that number. And the reason a lot of them, maybe they try to get out at the last minute because of the security concerns, they were not let into the airport. But a lot of them actually will have family members there that they can't get out with them. And that's part of the problem there also. The ones I think the Americans, the Taliban were letting through their perimeter. Again, it's the Afghan interpreters that they view really are the ones that betrayed their country because they worked with the Americans, the infidel, and they are the ones that have the bullseye on their back, and they're most likely going to be the ones that are going to die.
Clay, we got a lot left to do here in Afghanistan, even though the military presence has ended.
Yeah, look, it is going to be extremely chaotic, and what we talked about is it's not only the Taliban. As ridiculous as it is that we are relying on the Taliban to be our eyes and ears on the ground in Afghanistan, you've got to deal with Al-Qaeda, you've got to deal with ISIS-K, and all of the other groups that are going to find their way in. It's going to be an absolutely massive dumpster fire of epic proportions, and all of those groups have an incentive in some way to take advantage of American citizens, which is why, despite what Jen Psaki might say, leaving these citizens stranded behind is an unmitigated disaster for the Biden administration. And who knows what they're going to actually have Joe Biden say, because the guy can barely speak right now. I mean, they're going to write his speech. He's going to read it right off the teleprompter, and then we'll see whether or not they give him a list of who we can ask questions from. But I don't think there's any American, at least not any American with a functional brain, that feels better after they see Joe Biden speak than they did before.
That's something we should pose to President Trump here in just a few minutes. Stay with us. America vowed to never forget. The 20th anniversary of 9/11 is almost here. Let that sink in for a second. 20 years since the deadliest attack on American soil. So much has changed since, but one foundation remains committed to honoring the lives lost on 9/11 and the heroes who continue to serve our communities and country. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation, Clay.
Yeah, and this year, Buck, they're bringing back Towers of Light tributes at the Pentagon and Flight 93 memorials because of your support, because you remember. Chairman and CEO Frank Sillers honoring the fallen by walking more than 500 miles to connect the 9/11 sites. The morning of 9/11, he's retracing his baby brother's footsteps to ground zero 20 years later. Talk about emotional. And the foundation is starting new traditions, reading the names of every person lost to 9/11 related illness, and in a separate ceremony, the names of soldiers lost in the war on terror as well. You can help our country to never forget. Donate $11 a month at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2, T.org.
Hi, it's Jonathan Cotton with the Good Feet Store, and you know what time of year it is? It's back to school time, and time once again for all of those after-school activities. Whether it's ballet or football, Drama or field hockey, band or basketball, kids' feet need to feel good. Those cleats, sneakers, or shoes for band often don't do those young feet any favors. If our kids are going to stay active and healthy, then they need good feet. That means it's also time to take your kids to the Good Feet store. Yeah, that's right, the young ones, the kids. Bring them into the Good Feet store and let's treat them to some personal service. Our team members will measure their feet and find the right arch support for them. They can still wear the shoes they want, but they will have the support to make them comfortable now and keep their feet healthy for the future. It won't take long, and it could change their life. Go to goodfeet.com to make an appointment or just stop by the location nearest you. The Good Feet store.
Welcome back in. Clay Travis, Buck Sexton. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. We're about to be joined by 45 himself, President Donald Trump, going to join the show here in the next couple of minutes as Joe Biden also prepares to address what is going on in Afghanistan 20 years after that war began. We're almost to the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I don't think there's any doubt at all that the reason why Joe Biden wanted to be out by August 31st, Buck, was he was hoping to have a big celebration on the 20th anniversary of 9/11 where he was able to say, see, I got us out of this war, and that would be an accomplishment of his first term. Instead, basically everything has blown up in Joe Biden's face. The border is a disaster. The murder rate overall has skyrocketed. We have got major issues associated with inflation, and everything that basically Joe Biden has touched has turned, let's be honest, to crap beyond a shadow of a doubt.
And Joe Biden is in a place right now, Clay, where he's just hoping that the focus shifts away from what has happened there and what is continuing to happen, because it's impossible. There are some things where no matter how much you put Psaki out there and the rest of the corporate Democrat media, they're not going to be able to convince people to stop believing their own lying eyes. And that's what we've seen in Afghanistan. That's what we see with a whole host of issues. The fact that we're not even seeing media coverage of our wide open southern border, which is setting records month after month. The old paradigm, Clay, was in the summer, the numbers would go down, right? It's hot. People don't, and you got to think about it. It's not just uncomfortable. People die of dehydration. Border Patrol will tell you that. And now we're in a place where, because the border's so open and it's so easy, people are saying, well, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to go now while I can. And so you're setting record numbers. That's because of a Biden decision. These are all because of policies that they've put in place.
And what's so frustrating about it, there is zero coverage of that, right? And you're right. And we talked about earlier in the show how there's going to be a clear attempt to pivot away from Afghanistan, away from all the lives that were lost in Afghanistan, away from the chaotic departure, leaving behind all the material, billions of dollars. We spent $2 trillion on this war, and the departure from Afghanistan was more of a calamity than even the departure from Saigon was back in 1975. All of it is an unmitigated disaster. And frankly, Buck, I don't even know what they can point to as it pertains to Joe Biden in the first 8 months that is not infinitely worse than even the most ardent Joe Biden critics might have believed was going to be possible.
That's where I feel like I have a little bit of sheepishness on this, Clay. I assumed that the presidency of Joe Biden would be a disaster, but I thought that there'd be some autopilot aspects of it, right?
Yes.
Like I thought that coming out of COVID, for example, the economy would have enough of a wind at its back that you'd be saying employment. I mean, there'd just be optimism and people would be wanting to start businesses and do these things. Yeah, you're seeing some pockets of asset inflation. Really, that's going on right now. But the economy overall is not doing very well because COVID, remember he said he was going to shut down COVID, not the economy. That turned out to be overpromising, to say the least.
Well, there's no doubt. And you start to factor and add all these things up. And one of the big questions has been, as Biden tries to dodge the blame for this unmitigated disaster in Afghanistan, is this going to follow him and be directly connected to the domestic policy agenda, which is also failing? We are joined now by 45 himself, President Donald Trump. President Trump, we appreciate you making the time for us. What is your reaction as you see this unmitigated disaster of Joe Biden's leadership in Afghanistan, and how much different do you think it would be if you were president of the United States right now?
Well, it would have been the exact opposite because, frankly, we were in perfect shape. Abdul, he's now the head guy. That was the one I was dealing with. And he understood exactly what I was saying. I said they'll be held to pay if you touch any American soldiers or any Americans. And even Biden said the other day, I think probably mistakenly from his standpoint, because they don't usually do this, but he came out and said, well, no American soldier was killed since the previous administration came to that agreement, which is true. We had many other conditions, and they were strong conditions, and they didn't meet some of them, and we bombed the hell out of them. And they would have met them all, and we would have been out. We would have had all of our people out. We would have had all of our equipment. I said, every nail, I want every nail, every screw, every tank, every plane. And those planes are in very good working order. You look at Apaches, they cost a fortune, tens of millions of dollars, and they were flying them yesterday. They were having a good time flying our Apache helicopters. And they have, whether it's 73, 83, or $85 billion worth of equipment, thousands of trucks, hundreds of tanks, and other kinds of military gear, and it's just disgraceful what happened. And I think it's the greatest embarrassment in the history of our country.
Donald, President Trump, it's Buck Sexton here, and I just want to know, do you think, hey, good to talk to you again, sir. Do you think that we're going to get all these Americans out, and do you think that, what would you want to see happen here? What would you like to see to get them all out?
Well, now I'm hearing stories that they were trucked to the border and the Taliban turned them back and said, you go back, and they even sent armed guards with them. This is coming out today. Yesterday, tremendous disrespect was paid by Biden when he kept looking at his watch over and over again. I understand every time a coffin came off the plane, he was looking at his watch, and the people, the parents and the relatives are just angry, as they should be. Nobody should have been killed. We had that under perfect control, and after I got out, which was a rigged election, it just shows you how important it is. But after I got out, Abdul and his group, they went wild. And the Americans were told to leave by that time, too. That's why they ran out. They wanted to make it that last minute. The plane went off. But they left a lot of people behind, and probably a lot more than the 200 or 250 that they're talking about. And now people are calling in saying they're afraid for their lives. American University, they're all afraid for their lives. The kids are calling in. What kind of a thing is this? And the Marines are so brave, and the Navy and the Army and all of them, the Air Force. And you see what's happening. And I'll tell you, the soldiers didn't want to leave. But our television generals are terrible. We have great generals because I wiped out the 100% of the ISIS caliphate in Iraq and Syria, and we did it quickly, a lot quicker than the television guys said we could do it. We have great generals, we have great people, but not the television generals.
President Trump, I know you can't. I watched you on Hannity, and I know you said because of FEC rules, you couldn't announce whether you were going to run again in 2024. But when you see how much of a disaster Joe Biden has been in the first 8 months, and I'm sure you've seen some of the data where a lot of different people who voted for Joe Biden have come out and said, boy, if we had this to do all over again, we'd vote for President Trump. It feels like if you got the opportunity to run against him, assuming they try to run him again in 2024, that you would absolutely wallop and destroy him. How much would you relish that opportunity?
Well, number one, I have to tell you, I think they did vote for me, okay? If you look at what's going on in the various states, I think they did vote for me. I got 75 million votes, which was 12 million more votes than I got the previous election, 2016. And I think they actually did. And I put out a statement yesterday, if they could run a war as well as they rig an election, we'd have no enemies. We'd have total control over everything. It's very sad. When you look at this, it's very, very sad. But, when you do that, when you announce regulations, rules, regulations, everything else, it's a whole new set. But I'll be honest with you, I am thinking about doing something early because this is ridiculous what's happening. They're destroying our country. These people are they're using prosecutors to their own benefit. That's all they know how to do is cheat and use prosecutors to their own benefit. They have prosecutors all over the place going after Republicans, IRS going after Republicans, and we don't play that game. The Republicans haven't played that game with our guys, that's for sure.
So you're thinking, though, already, you're so frustrated that you're thinking about stepping in and going ahead and saying, let's go.
Well, I'm thinking about it much more. I figured I'd wait till after midterms, but I am thinking about it. When I look at the border, when I look at what he's doing with inflation, and when I was so proud. We were energy independent, really, for the first time in the history of our country. They say 75 years. For the first time in the history of our country, energy independent. Gasoline was $1.87. And think of it, $1.87 a gallon, and now it's going to be over $5 or $6 very soon. We're no longer energy independent, by the way. And he stopped so much. They stopped ANWR. They've been trying to get ANWR in Alaska, probably the biggest drilling site in the world. I got that done. Reagan couldn't get it done. Nobody could get it done. I got it done. And they just gave it back. They just gave it up. And now they're going to see, and you've seen that, you've reported on it, now they're going to see OPEC to see if they will give us some oil and energy. They want energy now from OPEC. We didn't have to talk to OPEC. OPEC talked to us. So when I look at what's happening with that, with the border, with Afghanistan, Afghanistan makes the border look good. Because, frankly, I mean, what they did with the border was grossly incompetent. We had the best in our history. Now it's the worst in our history in just a few months. But that looks good compared to this horror show in Afghanistan.
President Trump, can I ask you, what are you planning in the immediate future? You know, we've asked you before, are you going to get back into the big fight as a contender? But in the midterms, which are going to be coming up sooner, what are you planning, and what is the MAGA movement going to do to try to take power back in the meantime from these Democrats who are failing the country on so many levels?
Well, the MAGA movement, as you say, is stronger than I think it's ever been. You saw the crowd, the massive crowd I had in Alabama on Saturday night. It was incredible in the rain and thunder and everything else, and you couldn't even see the end of it. It was so big. And I'll be doing rallies, but I think maybe I'm going up to Iowa. We're going to Georgia. We're doing rallies, and we have massive rallies, probably bigger than even before the election because they see what's happening. But one of the things I'm doing that you cover very well is endorsing people, and I'm 128-2 in endorsements. We just got somebody great in, and if you look at what just happened in Ohio, great state of Ohio, and frankly Texas, where we had 2 Republicans running. It's the first time that's happened, 2 Republicans running for a House seat. We're doing great, and the endorsement seems to be very important. You know the expression, an endorsement's not worth the paper it's written on, except if Trump does it, and I'm honored by it. It's a great honor, and we're getting great people in, so we're endorsing really great people, and that's what I'm focused on, that. But I may be taking a look at exactly the first part of your question, because our country is being destroyed.
What we need, Mr. President, we appreciate the time that you're giving us today. We hear from our audience so much. They miss you and they want you throwing punches on behalf of them because there's so few people standing up in an aggressive way to the Biden administration. What Buck and I would like to do is we'd like to come down to Mar-a-Lago and do the show with you, let you take calls, do as much of the show as you would like with us to talk to our people and your people and help lead that fight. Will you pick a day? We'll come down any time in the future that works for you and bring the show down to Mar-a-Lago with you.
We've been talking about it.
It would be my honor, and we'll do it. And you guys are doing a great job, and I've been watching, and I'm looking at your ratings. Rush would be very proud of you. I'll tell you, Rush was our friend. Rush was incredible. You know, I didn't know Rush, and I came down the escalator with our great First Lady, and we came our future First Lady at that time. And Rush loved it, and he loved what I had to say. He said he's speaking the truth, and he was there, and I didn't know Rush, and I got to know him well, and he was great. He'd be very proud of you two guys.
President Trump, we really appreciate your time today, sir, and we're looking forward not only to you bringing the fight to the left and helping this country get back on its feet, but also we'll see you down in Mar-a-Lago, sir.
Just
probably in the winter time when it's a little chilly up here in the Northeast.
We'll do that. We will do that.
Thank you so much, President Trump.
It's not fun. We have to do it. We will
do it. Absolutely. An honor, sir. Thanks so much for being with us. Clay, I mean, how else can we
It's a good way to finish off a show. We'll talk about that tomorrow. We appreciate all of you. He's always fantastic. How good is that Mar-a-Lago show going to be?
Amazing.
You're listening to Clay Travis and Buck Sexton on the EIB Network.
Switching to Geico is a good idea, especially when you consider everything.
First off, Geico makes it easy to switch. They have licensed agents available 24/7 online or over the phone.
But if it's so easy, you might start thinking everything is easy, even big wave surfing. And it's not. It's actually quite difficult.
Well, if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds on car insurance. And you could keep saving by bundling your motorcycle, boat, and RV, plus your home or renter's insurance.
But saving money might lead you to make some questionable purchases, like a 20-foot feather boa. And do you know how hard it is to clean a 20-foot feather boa?
Well, they do have an industry-leading mobile app you can use to pay your bill, file and manage a claim, or add a new driver.
But when life gets a little easier, it makes you too confident, and you start calling everyone Ace. And you're better than that.
Well, Geico has a 97% customer satisfaction rating and has been saving people money for 85 years. It's hard to beat that.
But you're right.
Switch to Geico. It's obviously a good idea.